Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Justin Davis, and you notice I have a new backdrop here today. This is a new table that I got from IKEA. It's like a bamboo table type of backdrop for you guys. Just something different for the channel, and if you want to support me on Patreon, that will help me do further things like this on the channel, like buy new mics and buy new SD cards, cameras, all kinds of things. What I really want coming up is a Sennheiser wireless mic for the channel, so I can really upgrade the sound on this channel. Right now I'm using one of those kind of cheapy Insignia mics from Best Buy, and it's really not that great. I do a little bit of post in Final Cut Pro to make it sound just a little bit better for you guys, but I want to try to level up the channel again this year. So I appreciate you if you decide to support me on Patreon and you like my videos, my honest reviews and things like that, and my opinion on all these new whoops that are coming out, and that would be super cool. And make your comment below, because we're also giving away that Emax Tinyhawk RTF on the channel, and we're giving away an eSheen trash can. So two super awesome prizes to start the year off with, and I want to say thanks to all my Patreons that are continuing to support me and make this channel happen. You guys are awesome. So let's get started with this Ghostrider. There's not a speck of dirt on it right now. You can see this is a polycarbonate style frame. It's all one piece. You should be able to buy more frame components for this coming up soon. They have a lot of external bracing outside the frame, which is really cool. The prop guards are built into it. There is a bit of flex on this frame. It feels nice and flexy, but also rigid. So I'm very interested to see if part of this frame breaks during my flight test. It does feel pretty rigid, and I haven't really seen a whole lot of materials like this coming out. I think the other frame out there right now that might be close to this would be one of the Diatone R239NXs with that external prop guard configuration. You can get two versions of that NX, the carbon frame and this polycarbonate style frame, but this is from Skystars, and this one is so cool to me because the way it looks really neat from the front with that little dome that goes over the top of your camera there. You have a 200 milliwatt transmitter on there, which I think is super cool. This one was the plug and play also, so I added an XM receiver with a single antenna out the bottom, because I'm going to be flying this fairly close in and like proximity style flying. So I have my antenna right there, plenty of venting on the bottom. It has that sort of cool little sharp point at the front, two sharp points on the side, and it almost reminds me of the Ghost from Pac-Man. It's kind of cool looking. So we also have 1104 motors, and those are 7500 kV with Jim Fan Hulky 2040 props on here. So this should be a pretty cool quad. I'm also going to test it out for you guys on 2, 3, and 4S. God knows if it'll be able to handle 4S. If I plug it in and it fries it, I'm going to test 4S last for you guys. So I can make the mistakes for you guys. That way you don't plug in a battery and find out that you fried something. You get that little puff of white smoke coming out of the stack, you know you plugged in a battery that was too big for the rest of the components on here. So we're going to find out if it's going to work with 2, 3, and 4S. And this motor setup and ESC combo in the past has worked on 4S for me. 20 amp ESCs are totally fine for 4S, but we're going to find out, and that's the fun part of this channel. So let me do the experimenting for you guys. Also, I will test out the PIDs on here, and we'll see how this flies, line of sight, and we'll do some FPV as well. I'll give you an honest opinion on what I think about this quad. Is it worth the money? I think it's around $108. You can get the kit, you can save yourself a little bit of money, or you can get the plug and play one, which I have here. It comes pre-built with no receiver, and you're going to add your own receiver, and I'll show you where it plugs in inside the stack here. What I really think is cool also before we start flying is this little hole they put here for the USB port. When I first got it, I thought, oh my god, look at this dome. There's no way to access the USB port. Aha, yes there is right there, and I'm able to get my plug just underneath the prop guard right here and plug it in for beta flight. So let's go ahead now outside. Let's do a little bit of flying, you guys. We'll come back in the studio and I'll pop the top and I'll show you guys all the components inside this stack. Here we go. A little bit of Ghostrider action coming your way. All right, guys, the sun is out, and it might be out momentarily, but we're gonna go ahead and get this little guy up in the air. If you're just starting out, I would suggest starting out on a 2S battery. If you're just getting into FPV, it's really nice and mild, and you can fly and stabilize, and you can work your way up to acro later. And it's cool because it has the prop guards. We probably won't even need an extra set of props today, I'm hoping, but I love the way this quad looks. It's super cool looking. This is different than what I've seen out there. This is a whole different design, so we'll see if it holds up. out in the field test. Let's go ahead and do some line of sight flying with it and get this little guy up in the air. So here we go. I'm gonna go ahead and arm the motors. Yeah, I'm flying in acro right now. Let's just check out the stable hover and listen to the motors. I always want to listen to the motors line of sight first before I start flying and really getting out there. Still punch out real quick. That's 2S. I hear a little bit of flutter there. Not gonna lie, I don't do that on this channel. All right, nice roll rate. The roll rate's looking pretty good. And it's gonna be super mild on 2S. I could just go ahead and plug in a 3S battery for you and show you how that's gonna work out. Let's go ahead and grab a 3S battery just for the fun of it. I'll unplug this, take this off. One thing I don't like is that they used one of these style straps. These straps should probably just stop being put on quadcopters. These are probably the most annoying straps on the entire planet. So we'll go ahead and grab a 3S battery in here somewhere. There's a 4S. Let's grab a 3S tattoo for you, and we should get a little better punch. 1104 motors in the early days of the micro brushless world, actually pretty punchy little motors, and they can handle quite a bit of juice. So let's go ahead and try out 3S for you. There'll be quite a difference. When you move up battery sizes, it really changes the flight characteristic and gives you a lot more punch out. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Now it's screaming on 3S. So 2S, if you're just starting out, it's gonna be awesome. Now it's really loud, actually. Kind of interesting. Almost sounds like a ducted fan jet. Hear that thing? It's crazy. I don't want to really dunk it in the grass because the grass is a little bit wet right now, but now it's feeling punchy. Listen to that thing scream. These little 1104s can be beastie if you want them to be. Looking good in the air. Nice flips. Responsive. Let's do a couple more flips there. All right, 2 or 3 flips. Come back. Feeling good. Feeling really good. Looks really awesome in the air. All right, so let's go ahead and do some FPV with this little guy. Here we go with the Ghostrider 95X. All right guys, welcome back from the flight test. What did you guys think about that quad? It seems to need some help in the camera department. Let's just go ahead and get all the honest review stuff out on the table here for the Ghostrider. I think the camera could be a little bit better. If you were to get this quad, I would suggest upgrading the camera to something like a Cat X camera. Maybe one of the new Runcam micros on there might be a little bit better. I did have my receiver kind of resting on the back side of the camera, and I think that caused a little bit more vibration because I do have my receiver zip tied down and a little piece of VHB underneath the receiver right here underneath the camera, but it might have had some extra vibration coming from the motors up to the base of the camera, and that might have been my issue with that. You can mount your receiver in the far back spot, which I'll show you in a second, and that's going to be probably a better spot for it so that your receiver is not touching one side of the camera, and that is probably going to make it a lot better experience for you. Now, I'm wondering if some of that vibration is coming up from the base of the frame up through the top of this dome right here to the camera itself, but yeah, that's probably one of my biggest concerns is jello on this quad, and so I'm going to be working with it more to try to get rid of that jello and work my way out of that. I did notice at a higher throttle and higher RPM that it did have more jello, and we also tested out 2, 3, and 4S batteries for you. All those batteries plugged into this quad, and you can use any of those batteries. If you go up past 3S, I think you're going to start hitting serious vibrations in the power system and to the camera. So you're probably going to want to switch out the props too. I'm not a huge fan of the Gem Fan Hulkies. I know there's a pretty big core group of people out there that like the Hulkies, but I'm not a real big fan of these props. I think there's more efficient props out there that we can use that are in the 2040 class range. If I can find them, I'll put some links down for you guys below. I think that the onboard F4 flight processor is doing a pretty good job. It was set up as dual 8K, so it should be pretty sensitive on the PIDs. You can go in and bring down the D and possibly bring down the P a little bit, make this tune just a little bit better. It is a 25 by 25 millimeter stack in here, and like I said before, we have a 3 stack setup in here. ESCs on the very bottom. Those are running D-Shot 600. We have an onboard beeper, which is cool, and 20 amp ESCs. No problem on 2, 3, and 4S. Like I said, if you're brand new to FPV, start out with this quad on 2S, and I think it's going to be a really, probably a mild, easy to fly FPV experience for you, and you're almost not going to break anything on this quad. And this is really cool that this whole frame came back in one piece, because I actually did slam dunk it pretty hard from coming around the side of a tree, and just somehow lost it and went straight into the ground, and I felt like I heard a crack when it hit the ground, and what it was is the fact that these prop guards flexed and actually snapped one of the props, and I thought it was the frame, but thank God it was actually a prop, because it hit really hard. There's just a little bit of grass on this backside right here, and there's no cracks in this polycarbonate frame anywhere all the way around. So good news is that the frame holds up extremely well. I think it's as durable as the Diatone one that came out. They might even be sourcing the same material that Diatone has for their new polycarbonate style frame. Super rugged. One thing I want to note, most of you guys, when you get a brand new quad, I always tell you guys to go over the entire quad with a driver and check all of the bolts on the quad, because these screws on the bottom of the motors were just a little bit loose for me. You can also take a tiny dab of Loctite and put on each screw. Make sure you don't put too much. Wipe it off on your shirt or something, and then go ahead and tighten it down through the frame to the motor, and that will make sure that your screws don't fall out when you're flying. I also like that they have an XT30 on here, because for this size and this power system, I want to get the maximum thrust out of those 1104 motors. And you know, I'm going to say the sweet spot. Let's talk about battery for a second. The sweet spot on this quad is probably going to be 3S. There's a lot of woofs out there right now that are rocking 3S, and this one can handle the 3S. My suggestion to you guys would be to go in there and dial down the D, starting on the D. Dial that down 10 points or so, and just do it 5 to 10 points at a time until you see that your oscillations smooth out a little bit. And I think you'll have a much better flying quad. Now, as far as the the website goes, it actually says that the input voltage on the ESCs is 2S LiPo, but you know, like I said, I'm going to test this out on 2, 3, and 4S for you, and I didn't have any issues with 4S other than extremely high oscillations when I was at medium to high throttle, and 2S seemed to be lacking the punch that I wanted, but I'm a more experienced pilot, so yeah. And where I found that the sweet spot was 3S with this ESC and power setup. I think that the onboard VTX as well is a good choice. It actually does a few different output powers. It does 25, 100, 200, so I have mine cranked all the way up to 200, and I feel like I could probably get a little better reception if you take a driver or something, heat up a screwdriver, and just punch a hole back here and bring that dipole out the top right here. I think that's going to be a better video signal back to your goggles for you. And the motors, those are the Skystar motors, and we talked about these before. These are the 1104. Let me just give you guys a little closer look. They do have the closed bottom design. It's not an open bottom design. Skystar's logo is on there. The hardware on top of it is decent. 4 bolts on the bottom. That's a standard setup there. And I'm so impressed that this frame held up. All of this frame made it back into the studio in one piece. That's for my flight test. I don't know if you guys have seen the way I fly. I fly kind of like I stole it. And this thing survived. And I have a feeling a lot of it's to do with this dome. This dome that covers this stack is just really great. And I love the fact that they left a hole for the USB port. That's just awesome. So only 4 screws hold on that dome. So you can take your Ghost dome off by taking off these little M2 bolts front and back. There's 2 in the front and 2 in the back. And what you want to be really careful with when you're working with a polycarbonate frame, when you're screwing these back in, don't over tighten them. When you feel that they start to get a little bit tight for you, just go ahead and stop with your driver, because otherwise you're going to damage and you're going to strip that frame because you're screwing metal into plastic. So one thing in the hobby I always tell people is never over tighten things. Everybody wants it to be tight as possible so that it doesn't come out or fall off and cause a crash, but you really don't want to over tighten things. So I'm just going to leave that screw. Yeah, I'm going to leave that screw in there. It's pretty tight. So the camera plugs in the front up here. We have our XM receiver right there running S-Bus and D16 mode. And we have a buzzer built in on the very top of the stack. Check that out. That's pretty cool. And it's in the middle. I like this design. It's like this little LED buzzer stackable situation here. And that makes the 4th stack. Right below that is the VTX. And I believe this little guy has smart audio as well, so you don't have to worry about changing channels and bands and power with the little LED, the little push button right there. It's just below my receiver right there on that side. And over here we have the USB port on the flight controller. And right next to that we have a boot button. So it's actually a button, not one of those little tiny gold buttons. I prefer these larger ones. The larger ones are more susceptible to breaking off, but they work pretty good because you can just hold it down with your fingernail to upgrade the firmware. And what's also nice on this stack is that they do have it dampened here. You can see there are some rubber grommets in between the ESCs and the flight controller of the next stack up. That's nice. That should take care of a lot of oscillations that we were getting. But the camera is mounted up inside there, as you can see right here. And these screws are also screwing into the back of the camera there, which is plastic. It almost looks like a Runcam Super Nano cam. It might be the Runcam Nano. I need to really just look in the specs for you guys and make sure that that is a Runcam Nano. I don't think it is. I think it's just a typical camera. They do say that the image sensor is a 1/3 CMOS sensor on that, and it's running 800 TVL, so it should actually be a pretty nice camera. It does have a field of view of 115 degrees, so I like that. It's more of a narrow field of view. And it has a power input voltage of 5 volts, and it only weighs 3 grams. But let's go ahead and set this little guy on the scale as well. Let's get a dry weight, and then I'll give you the different battery weights as well. All right, here we go. Let's go ahead and turn on the scale, and we'll set the quad on there. I'll give you a dry weight. Dry weight just means without the battery on there. Okay, I'm gonna put that up inside there, tuck that in there so we're not touching the table at all. I can get it to sit on there correctly. It's a big frame. So 86.9 grams, that's without the, I have a 2S 450 here, and I was flying all 450s today and getting a little over 2.5 minutes. If you want to get the maximum flight time on this quad, you want to run something like a 2S 650 or maybe a 3S 650 is probably going to be around the sweet spot. I'd also tried out an 850 for you guys, and that was flying just a little bit heavy, but I was getting close to 4 minutes with an 850. And the strap is big enough to accommodate the 850 battery, which is cool. And of course the strap will accommodate these super thin batteries here. And let's go ahead and put the 3S 450 on here and see what we get, if I can get it to balance. Come on, Ghostrider. So that's 128.5 grams. Still way under that 250 gram mark. And right there we're at 145.6 grams with the 4S 450. Now if you put an 850 on here, I think you'll still be underneath that 250 gram mark, which is kind of cool. And all these microbursts are usually way under 250 grams, even the 100 millimeter size quads. So that little strap under there is making things difficult. There we go, 86.8 grams. Pretty lightweight little guy. So let's go ahead and sum it up for you guys and give you my final opinion on the Ghostrider 95X. I think this is a cool quad, and I think it has quirks once you get up into the higher range batteries. So if I was going to classify this quad, I would almost classify this quad as more of a beginner's style quad. It's not going to be as crazy and nimble and responsive, and power to weight ratio is not going to be the same as something like the Mobula 7 or the Trash Can, obviously, because they're way smaller, they're way lighter. The power to weight ratio on those quads is way different. This is a heavier quad. Those other whoops, those other 2S whoops weigh in around 40 grams, 35 grams. So we're talking twice the weight here, but also something that is going to be probably in the long run for you way more durable. So I think what we have here as far as durability goes, we're looking at 5 stars for the durability. Now I did smack it really hard one time and it came in, and I mean I smacked it so hard that it broke the prop. So the good news is that this frame is actually holding up in some of the hardest crashes that I had with it. So I think you can trust the frame, and that says a lot, because when I first pulled this out of the box I thought, oh man, here we go, I'm going to break this all to pieces. I can't wait to get this out there and bang this around for you guys. And that first crack that I heard, I thought to myself, well, there goes the frame, it's done, I'm gonna walk over and see it in pieces. And I walked over and it was just a broken prop. So I would suggest getting some different props on here. I'm not a huge fan of these, but like I said, also you can bring down the D to try to trim out some of those oscillations. Also maybe bring down the P. I think they have them set just a little bit high. All the stock rates and everything in here looked fine. They were on 70 all the way across the board on the super rates. So the rates are set up to be fairly less aggressive for you. And if you want to fly this in stability, you can bring that camera angle down and really do some nice cruising with that quad. So I'm going to say that this quad is definitely more of a beginner quad, and it's more of a cruiser. It's honestly better on 3S than 2S for me, but I like more punch. So if I'm trying to do like a split S over a tree or something, I want that extra throttle that 3S gives me coming back around so that I can maintain my line underneath that tree and make it under without slapping the grass. On the 2S battery, I was having a hard time doing that. I was full throttle when I would come back around the tree and bouncing off the ground a few times trying to do that. So for the new guys, start out on the 2S. If you're intermediate, fly the 3S on this one all day. If you're looking for a truck, this is definitely one of the trucks out there. And I think as far as the durability goes, we could say 5 stars on that. The fun factor is actually a lot of fun. The fun factor would be 5 out of 5 on the fun factor. And my overall rating for this quad is going to be somewhere around 4.5 because I think they have something pretty cool here. I did do half point off for the amount of jello that I saw, but that might have been actually my fault by putting my receiver right up against the camera, as you can see right here. So I might have had an offset with the camera with the balance up front, so I might have been receiving some of that motor noise coming up through the stack. And really that camera is meant to be mounted right straight to this dome without touching the stack. So if you put your dome back on, make sure that your receiver is not touching that camera at all, and you shouldn't have any vibrations. If you do have vibrations, you're probably flying the 4S battery and it's going to be too much, but definitely the 3S battery is the way to go on this quad, and I think it looks damn cool. And let me turn off one of these lights for you guys while I have you here in the review, and I'll just plug in this 2S and you guys can see the lights underneath this thing, because if you want to fly this in the dark and at night, you can definitely do that. This camera also does have some kind of a nighttime setting on it, which is cool. See, it would be all black and white, but you should be able to see with this camera. That is just too cool. And maybe that's why they call it the Ghostrider, because it looks like a Pac-Man ghost and it glows. It's super cool. But thanks again for watching this review, guys. This has been the Ghostrider X95. I think it's a cool quad for the new guys getting into the hobby, and so Skystars has another fun one for you guys to check out. And the prices, by the way, the prices are $98.99 for the kit version. You could build it yourself, save yourself a little money. And also, if you want to get the plug-and-play one like I have here, that's with no receiver, it's going to be add your own receiver. You can get that one for $108.99. And Bind and Fly with the FrSky XM receiver is going to be $120, and Bind and Fly with a FlySky receiver is going to be $112.99. So pretty good prices on the Ghostrider. Enjoy flying, guys, and thanks again for watching my channel. I'm Justin Davis. I will see you guys on the next one. Peace. Take care. Bye-bye.